August 1991. Alberta, Canada. The sun is setting behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the Unforgiven set. Clint Eastwood stands alone near the barn, holding a script he's read 1,000 times. He's directing and starring in what might be his last Western. 61 years old, tired, ready to say something final about violence and age and regret. Then Gene Hackman walks over. What happens in the next 11 minutes doesn't just change the film. It changes Clint Eastwood, because Gene Hackman is about to do something no actor has ever dared to do. He's about to tell Clint Eastwood that he's wrong, and he's going to be right. To understand this moment, you need to understand who these two men are. Clint Eastwood in 1991 is Hollywood royalty, 35 years in the business. He's directed 12 films. He's played the man with no name, Dirty Harry, every version of American masculinity that exists. He doesn't explain himself. He doesn't argue. He just decides, and everyone follows. Gene Hackman is different. He's 61 years old, same as Clint. But where Clint is controlled, Gene is combustible. Where Clint is silent, Gene is honest to the point of pain. He's won an Oscar for The French Connection. He's been nominated 4 more times. He's one of the greatest character actors in history, and he doesn't care about being liked. They've known each other for years, but never worked together. There's mutual respect, but there's also distance. Clint represents old Hollywood, the strong, silent type. Gene represents the new guard, method actors who dig into darkness. They orbit different worlds. But for Unforgiven, they've come together. Clint is playing William Money, a retired gunfighter trying to outrun his past. Gene is playing Little Bill Daggett, the sheriff who represents everything Money used to be. Violent, cruel, certain of his own righteousness. It's the perfect casting. 2 men the same age, playing different versions of the same darkness. The first 3 weeks of shooting are smooth. Gene is professional, prepared, intense. He's built a character that's terrifying not because he's loud, but because he's methodical. Little Bill doesn't rage. He controls. He hurts people with the same calm you'd use to fix a fence. It's brilliant work, and Clint knows it. But something is bothering Gene, something he can't articulate at first. He watches Clint direct, watches him act, watches him shape the film. And he sees something that troubles him. Clint is holding back. On day 23, they're filming the scene where Little Bill beats up English Bob, the gunfighter played by Richard Harris. It's supposed to be brutal. Little Bill is supposed to humiliate English Bob, strip away his legend, show him to be nothing but a coward with a gun. The script calls for Little Bill to kick Bob while he's down, to whisper cruel truths in his ear, to break him completely. Clint blocks the scene carefully. Every movement is choreographed. Gene goes through the motions, delivering his lines with precision. But when Clint calls cut, Gene doesn't move. He stands there, looking down at Richard Harris on the ground, and something in his face hardens. "Can we try it again?" Gene says. Not a question, a statement. Clint looks up from the monitor. "That was good." "We got it. I'd like to try something different." The set goes quiet. Clint Eastwood doesn't do multiple takes unless there's a technical problem. He believes in instinct, in first takes, in actors trusting themselves. But Gene is asking for another chance. Clint nods slowly. "Show me." They reset. Clint calls action. And this time, Gene doesn't follow the choreography. He doesn't whisper. He doesn't hold back. He explodes. He kicks Richard Harris harder. His voice gets louder. His face contorts with genuine rage. And when he kneels down to deliver the final line about how legends are built on lies, there's something in his eyes that's terrifying. Not acting, something real. Clint doesn't call cut. He lets the camera roll. The scene goes 30 seconds longer than scripted. Gene just keeps going, keeps finding new ways to humiliate English Bob, keeps peeling back layers of cruelty. Finally, he stands up, brushes off his pants, and walks away. Only then does Clint call cut. The crew is frozen. They've never seen anything like that. Gene Hackman just went off script in a Clint Eastwood film and made it better. Clint walks over to Gene. His face is unreadable. "Why did you do that?" Clint asks quietly. "Because Little Bill wouldn't hold back. He's not a man who does things halfway. He's committed to his cruelty. He believes in it, and if we don't show that, if we make him controlled and measured, we're lying about who he is." Clint is silent for a long moment. Then he nods. "You're right. We're using that take." That's when things shift. Gene has just done something no one does to Clint Eastwood. He's challenged him, not with ego, not with attitude, but with truth. And Clint, instead of shutting him down, listened. Over the next few weeks, Gene keeps pushing. Not on every scene, not constantly, but when it matters. When they're filming the scene where Little Bill builds his house, Gene suggests adding a line about how he's never quite satisfied, how nothing he builds is ever good enough. Clint writes it in. When they're filming the barroom scene where Little Bill tells the story of the Corky Island gunfight, Gene asks if he can tell it slower, make it more intimate, turn it into a meditation on how stories corrupt truth. Clint lets him, and slowly Clint starts to change how he's playing William Money. He watches Gene commit so fully to Little Bill's darkness, and he realizes he's been protecting Money, making him too sympathetic, too redeemable. Money needs to be darker, needs to be the man he claims to have left behind. On day 37, they're filming the scene where Money, sick with fever, is lying in the barn. The Schofield kid has just told him about killing a man for the first time, and Money is supposed to comfort him, to tell him it's okay, to be the mentor. But Clint changes the scene. Instead of comfort, he delivers the line about killing. It's a hell of a thing, killing a man. You take away all he's got and all he's ever going to have. It's the heart of the film, the admission that violence has a cost that can never be repaid. And Clint delivers it with no emotion, just fact, just truth. When he finishes, he looks over at the monitor where Gene is watching. Gene nods once. That's it. That's Money. The real confrontation comes in week 7. They're preparing to film the final sequence. Money's return to Big Whiskey to kill Little Bill and avenge Ned Logan. It's the climax of the film. Everything has been building to this, and Clint has it blocked as a traditional Western shootout. Money walks in, kills Little Bill, walks out. Quick, clean, mythic. Gene asks to talk to Clint privately. They walk to the edge of the set, away from the crew. "I think we're making a mistake," Gene says. Clint's jaw tightens slightly. How so? This scene, the way it's written. Money is too heroic. He walks in, he's in control, he's the gunslinger returned. But that's not who he is anymore. He's not the man with no name. He's an old man who's drunk and terrified and doing something he swore he'd never do again. He should be shaking. He should be barely holding it together. Clint is quiet. Gene continues. And Little Bill. He shouldn't go down easy. He's survived 100 fights. He's not going to just accept death. He should fight till the end, should make Money work for it. Because that's the truth of violence. It's not clean, it's not quick, it's ugly and desperate, and everyone involved is broken by it. What are you saying, Gene? I'm saying we need to make this hurt. Make it real. Stop protecting the audience. Stop protecting yourself. The words hang in the air. Clint could shut this down, could remind Gene who the director is, could go back to the original plan. But he doesn't. How do we do it? Clint asks. Gene thinks for a moment. You come in drunk, not tipsy, drunk. You're swaying, you can barely aim. And when you shoot me, I don't die right away. I keep talking, keep trying to reach my shotgun, keep fighting. Because Little Bill isn't afraid of death. He's afraid of being wrong. And in those final moments, he needs to understand that he was wrong about everything. They stand in silence. The sun is setting. The crew is waiting. Clint looks at Gene, really looks at him, and sees something he recognizes. Another man who's spent his whole life trying to tell the truth. Another man who understands that violence isn't noble or redemptive. It's just damage. Let's try it your way, Clint says. They reshoot the climax over the next 3 days. Clint plays Money as barely functional, shaking, drunk, terrified. When he walks into the saloon, you don't see the man with no name. You see a broken old man doing something that's going to destroy what's left of his soul. And when he shoots Little Bill, Gene doesn't just fall. He crawls. He reaches for his gun. He keeps talking, keeps trying to assert control, even as he's dying. The scene they create is devastating. There's no triumph, no catharsis. Just two old men, both killers, both convinced they were right, both destroyed by their choices. When it's over, when Gene delivers his final line about deserving to die, and Clint says deserve's got nothing to do with it, there's no victory in it, just exhaustion. Clint calls cut. The crew is silent. Gene stays on the floor for a moment, catching his breath. Then he stands, walks over to Clint. "Thank you for listening," Gene says quietly. "Thank you for pushing," Clint responds. Unforgiven wraps 2 weeks later. Clint edits the film himself. When he watches the final confrontation, he knows Gene was right. The scene is better, the film is better, not because it's more violent, but because it's more honest. It doesn't flinch from the truth that violence hollows you out, that there are no heroes in killing, just survivors and corpses. The film premieres in August 1992. Critics call it a masterpiece. Gene Hackman's performance as Little Bill is singled out as one of the greatest villain portrayals in cinema history. Not a monster, not a cartoon, just a man who believes he's right and uses that belief to justify cruelty. In March 1993 at the Academy Awards, Gene Hackman wins Best Supporting Actor. When he gives his acceptance speech, he thanks Clint for creating an environment where actors could take risks. He doesn't mention the fights, the challenges, the moments when he pushed back. But Clint, watching from the audience, knows. Years later, a journalist asks Clint about working with Gene Hackman, asks if it's true that Gene changed the film. Clint thinks for a moment. Gene made the film what it needed to be. He didn't let me hide, didn't let me make it safe. He understood that if you're going to make a film about violence, you have to show the truth of it, not the mythology. And he had the courage to push for that, even when it was uncomfortable. "Did you resent him for it?" the journalist asks. Clint shakes his head. "I'm grateful. Most actors just do what you tell them. Gene made me better, made the film better. That's rare. The truth is, Gene Hackman pushed Clint Eastwood harder than anyone in his career. Not with ego, not with demands, with honesty, with the refusal to accept easy answers or comfortable lies. And Clint, who spent his career being the man in control, the man who never explained himself, learned to listen. On that set in Alberta, when Gene told him the film needed to hurt more, Clint could have dismissed him, could have protected his vision, his legacy, his image. But he didn't, because Clint understood something that separates great directors from good ones. You have to be willing to be wrong. You have to be willing to let someone else see what you can't. Gene Hackman never worked with Clint Eastwood again. They remained friends, mutual admirers, but their paths didn't cross professionally. Maybe because they'd already said everything they needed to say. Maybe because Unforgiven was the perfect collaboration. Two men, the same age, both carrying the weight of decades in Hollywood, both refusing to lie about what violence costs. Little Bill Daggett dies on the floor of a saloon, still trying to assert control, still believing he deserves better. William Money rides away into the rain, having killed one more time, having proven he can never outrun who he is. And somewhere in the space between those two men, Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman created something that transcends Western, transcends genre. They created truth. Difficult, painful, necessary truth. That's the legacy. Not just the film they made, but the way they made it. With honesty, with courage, with the willingness to push each other past comfort into something real. Gene Hackman pushed Clint Eastwood, and Clint Eastwood let himself be pushed. And together, they made one of the greatest films in American cinema. Not because it was easy, because it was hard, because they refused to settle for anything less than the truth. And sometimes that's all that matters. Not the mythology, not the legend. Just two men standing in the dust, refusing to look away from what they've done. Refusing to pretend it was noble or necessary or anything other than what it was. Damage. Beautiful, terrible, unforgettable damage. That's Clint Eastwood. That's Gene Hackman. That's Unforgiven. Silent, honest, unforgiving.